this week, which is about communication and communication skills. And I have to I think I probably said it last week, but I'll say it again. Communication is not something we are born with. It is not something that we can inherently do unless we've been around exceptional communicative parents, which, let's be honest, 99% of us have not been. So it's a skill, and it's a skill that we have to learn. And most good communicators are only good communicators because they've very consciously decided to become one. And so within that framework, I thought I would explain a few different, I guess, personality types and characteristics, I suppose, of people that will really dramatically impact how you choose to communicate. So this is, it feels a little bit more like a webinar type class than a meditation class, but I'll try and keep it as, not information free, because I think the information is important, but not too heavy. But essentially we have, I think there's two different kind of characteristic profiles that I would like to talk about, which will dramatically impact the communication that you have with someone. The first one is the introvert extrovert. Now, introvert extrovert is a really fascinating kind of dichotomy. And for most people, I think there's kind of this sense of, an extrovert talks a lot and an introvert doesn't talk a lot, I suppose. But it kind of goes to so much more than that. So an extrovert typically gets their energy around people. If they're around lots of people, they get a lot of energy and they can feel energized by it. The other thing that characterizes an extrovert is that an extrovert has to externally process stuff. They don't have to, but it's dramatically easier for an extrovert to externally process. And by that, I mean, and a friend of mine had an amazing example of this, where let's say we're, two friends wanting to travel to Queensland for the weekend. So an extrovert, the way that they'll communicate it is externally. So, hey guys, are we going to go to Queensland this weekend? I've heard that the weather's not really great. And I know that, it can be tricky to get past the border at the moment. But do you know what? I haven't been to Queensland in forever. And I'm just so excited about going. It feels really, like I haven't gotten away in a long time. And I'm just wondering whether, it's really important to, pack sunscreen, because I know last time they had this really cool sunscreen shop up there around the beach. So, I'm just thinking about it and it feels like a really good idea. Do you know what? Bugger it. Let's go to Queensland. Okay. That's an extrovert. An introvert so the extrovert is needing to do that external processing, and the introvert will do internal processing. And that is their preferred way of processing and coming up with decisions. Now, introverts will do a lot of their processing internally. If they know how to communicate well, they can do that as well. So they might say to their extroverted friend or their other introverted friend, I'm just going to think about that for a moment. I'm just going to think about all the possibilities and I'll just get back to you in a couple of minutes, right? Great communication. I know what you're about to do. The introvert goes off and internally processes and comes back and goes, yeah, I'd really like to go to Queensland, right? Most introverts will not do that. They will just go away and think, and it can be quite frustrating for other people, but it's, again, a skill. And if in doubt, over communication is always, always, always better than under communication. And you guys will have felt that with different things. If you don't get communication about something, you usually don't know where the other person is at. So it can be an incredibly frustrating experience to go, well, I haven't heard from this person, so I don't know what's going on. But sometimes if you can communicate something small like, I'm still discussing it with so-and-so and I'll get back to you by 5 o'clock today, is perfect. It's not an answer, but it's an update. So the person who's waiting around isn't going, oh my goodness, have they forgotten? Do they care? I don't even know where they're at. What's going on? Okay. So that's introvert, extrovert. Now, when we're talking about relationships, which is a more intimate form of communication, plus obviously a more intimate form of relationship, there are three main categories of people which can really dramatically impact how you communicate. There is the number one, anxiously attached. So anxiously attached people are often preoccupied with their relationships and tend to worry about their partner's ability to love them back. Okay. And there is an avoidant. Avoidants tend to equate intimacy with a loss of independence and constantly try to minimize closeness. Okay. And a secure person, the third type, they feel comfortable with intimacy and are usually warm and loving. Okay, so this is the book where I got this information from. It's called Attached. It's super awesome if you want to understand more about the attachment styles. I love this book. It really gives you a lot of very clear, very good information about how different people attach and therefore how they're going to communicate or not communicate. So the anxiously attached are the ones that are, so out of those three types of people, both the anxiously attached and the secure people are wanting intimacy. They want connection and they want intimacy, but they'll go about it quite differently. So the secure person is more likely to give someone else space. The secure person is less likely to take things personally. And the secure person is more likely to attract another secure person. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on our, journeys, an anxiously attached person is more likely to attract an avoidant, and an avoidant is more likely to want an anxiously attached person. Why this happens, I have no idea, but this is a very typical pattern. And it can become a bit of a cat and mouse chase thing within a relationship where one person's really wanting to attach and the other person is getting freaked out, and then vice versa, that person will want to attach, and then, they can swap roles a little bit, but typically the main roles will remain. So anxiously attached is constantly wanting that attachment, but doesn't know how to go about it in a calm, rational, secure way. And the other person is trying to still keep their independence, which doesn't really work in relationship, and will often avoid conversation, intimacy, and closeness. What avoidance will also very often do is try and sabotage a relationship if it feels like it's getting too close or too intimate. So an avoidant is very, very likely to for example, start a massive fight after a very close encounter with somebody. And it's a way to kind of just make sure they have enough space so that they don't feel suffocated and that they don't feel overwhelmed. That can be exceptionally destructive to relationships. So it does talk quite a lot in this book about how the avoidants are probably the most difficult personality to deal with, and how much they usually need to do a lot more work in terms of choosing to create secure relationships, because their desire and their ability to avoid will often create a lot of problems. Because what will happen when you basically avoid someone who is anxiously wanting connection, you create more conflict. And it can be an exceptionally damaging process for people. Then if you add introvert onto avoidant, introverted avoidants are even more tricky, because not only are they avoiding, but they don't want to talk about the issue that's created the avoidance in the first place, or they don't even know. And usually it's a combination of all three. So we have kind of these intimate, entanglements between people that can come up in relationship that, this is especially for love relationships, but it can also happen with close relationships like mother-daughter relationships, sibling relationships, but it is most likely for the love relationships. I'm just going to quickly get a tissue, and I'm going to get you guys to just sit with that and see if there's any kind of patterns that you know of in your relationships. Hang on a second. Do you guys resonate or know or recognize your personality and or your kind of characteristics within relationship at all, just from what I've said? Or would you like more clarity?
I think these descriptions are really interesting. And I feel like I probably shift between avoidant and secure.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. What about you, Celia?
I know I'm not the avoidant. I know Dimitri is.
That is true. I'll give you that. But you can go into avoidance too at times. So avoidance is a really tricky place, because typically when someone goes into avoidance, there's very precious little that anybody else can do until that avoidant person wants to come back. Bearing in mind, if you are tending to avoidance, you need to be really mindful of the pain that can cause an anxiously attached person. And it causes significant pain to that anxiously attached person. So communication is super, super key here. And it's probably the hardest thing that an avoidant can do. I'm really struggling at the moment. I love you. I'm here, but I just need some time, is all an anxiously attached person needs to hear. They will very frequently not get it. But again, this is where the communication skills come in, because the skills can be the difference between a relationship staying secure and a relationship feeling very alone and scary. Okay, so huge differences. So there is this kind of requirement, even if you don't feel like it, to maintain a level of communication and to maintain a level of awareness of the impact on the other person, so that relationships don't suffer. So that's probably the most kind of important skill set to look at. And if you're not really sure, always over communicate versus under communicate, because the under communication actually causes so many more problems, especially if you're introverted, that don't need to happen. They actually don't need to happen. So it's a really fascinating thing, but ultimately when we're looking at then communicating with somebody, if you're unsure if somebody knows how you feel, you must say it. And there are different ways in which we need to speak up. And it will depend on who we're speaking to. So if you're an avoidant trying to talk to an anxiously attached person, it is actually very important, if you can manage it, to push through that desire to not speak and come into even just a small level of reassurance, just so that anxiously attached person can stay safe. Because when that anxiously attached person is avoided, they go straight into lack of safety. It's a lack of safety that happens, and they feel scared and alone and insecure. It's really, really fascinating. And then vice versa, for that anxiously attached person, if they're constantly trying to engage the avoidant, they're only going to get more avoidance. So the anxiously attached person needs to learn how to take a step back and wait, which can be exceptionally painful. But the avoidant will not come back until they feel like they've been given the space. So the avoidant needs to learn how to speak and to reassure, and the anxiously attached person needs to learn how to self-soothe and give space. And that's, I guess, the challenges in certain relationships. Then we also have the extrovert-introvert divide. So extroverts can speak, and usually over-communicate. And the introverts usually need time. So if you're an extrovert wanting to have a conversation with an introvert, the best way to do that is to forewarn them and then give them space. So, for example, if we're talking about the trip to Queensland and I'm an extrovert and I'm speaking to an introvert and I say, hey, let's go to Queensland. I'm really excited. I'd like to go this weekend. I'm just going to give you a few moments or a few hours. How about you go away and think about that and come back and we'll talk about it later. Yeah. Or, hey, I'm thinking about going to Queensland. Can we talk about it later? And just those little kind of preemptive requests can be everything to an introvert, because then they can go away and think about it without feeling steamrolled and then they can actually come to their own conclusions without need to speak them out loud. And typically what can happen is that the introvert who internally processes, the introvert also only gets energy from being alone, can go away, think about it, process it, come back and go, okay. It's not like introverts can't talk. And introverts can have excellent communication skills, but they have to work on it. So the introvert can go away, the introvert can internally process what they want to do and how they feel about something. And then once they've done that, they can come back and they can communicate it. Okay, so this is some of the nuances of the different personality types. And it is, I think personally, a really important thing to recognize and understand, especially with your love partners or your close people, because it really, really helps then to know how to approach a conversation. Can I just dive right in and start chatting and know that they'll meet me halfway? Or do I need to preempt and give them time to think? Do I need to, if this is a touchy subject and I'm speaking to an avoidant, do I need to just say it without, trying to cling on to them while I'm saying it and then step away? Or if I'm an avoidant, I need to make sure that I sit and listen to the person before I decide to tell them I'm going to take space and process. Okay, so it can be quite, nuanced if we're not really sure, and not everybody communicates the same way. So it is actually super important to get some idea about where you sit in those spectrums. So we've got introvert, extrovert, and then we've got anxiously attached, avoidant, and secure. So those different kind of combinations will depend on how you then approach somebody. Then if we're talking about the actual communication skills, we're then talking from a very interesting place of I feel, without accusing, without pushing, without poking, and without blame. And adding on to that, typically communicating about something, especially when it involves someone else. And I read about this in a really, really great book that's literally just called Communication Skills. It's a blue cover, and I think it's got yellow writing, and I don't have the book anymore. I used to have it a long time ago. Amazing book as well. You communicate these things to somebody else only when it personally impacts you, which is pretty cool. So someone in the house is constantly leaving their toothbrush in the sink. Now, if that annoys you, it annoys you, right? But if it doesn't actually personally impact you in any way, then the rules in this communication skills book, and I think they're pretty cool, is don't say anything. It's none of your business. Absolutely none of your business. But if your job is to clean the sink every morning, right, and their toothbrush is there and you have to move their toothbrush, then you are personally impacted, and that becomes a conversation. So it is a really fascinating one. If someone's just doing in the corner and you can leave the room because that's how they think or that's how they process, then personally you need to leave them alone. But if you're in one small room and you're trying to concentrate on work and they're in the corner, you are personally impacted, and that becomes a conversation. I'm throwing a lot of information out there. But it is a really, really interesting kind of setup so that we don't cause problems where they don't need to be, and we can cater to not only our own communication skills, but the other person's communication skills at the same time. Excuse me. So then we're talking about the I feel. Now, you guys have maybe heard this a lot over the years. I know I've heard it ad infinitum, but there's also nuances around the I feel. So when you go and talk to somebody, let's use the toothbrush example, the communication skills, which are fairly simplified, are when you leave your toothbrush in the sink, I feel very frustrated because I need to then move it before I can even do my chore of cleaning the sink. Can you please put it away every morning? That is how you do it. You start with when this happens, I feel I'm impacted by the personal impact, and then the outcome. What do I want? Can you please? Okay, that's the formula. When this happens, I feel, can you please? That's when there's something that needs to be changed or done in the house or in a relationship. Okay. That can be quite tricky when it turns into an accusatory I feel, which can be, I feel really pissed off every time you leave the toothbrush in the sink because you. That becomes very pokey, and the person that you're speaking to will feel poked, and then they will get defensive. And that doesn't work. When you can turn it completely around into the I feel this way because I'm impacted like this and I need this, then it's not so pokey. It's really just entirely about you and how you're impacted and how you feel. And that becomes a much easier conversation for the other person to accept and then potentially do something about. All right. I think that's a lot of information. How does all of that sound and feel to you guys from that kind of, and is this everything that you guys already knew? And am I just repeating information that you know already, or is this helpful?
It's really hard. I mean, we all over time learn to communicate, but sometimes because we're chastising the person, for leaving their toothbrush in the sink, it can piss them off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's only going to have much less impact when you do it less from a you've done this and you need to, because you're making it about them, and you've got to learn to switch it around and make it entirely about you. And like I said, if them just leaving their toothbrush in the sink isn't really impacting you, then really you have no right to tell them to change it, to be honest. And that can be a really, really tricky thing because we live in community with each other. There might be house rules that you've all agreed on, as in we all sit down and we all agree that nobody leaves their toothbrushes in the sink, and then that becomes, a contract that's been broken when you do. So that's an entirely different thing. But if you haven't done that, and that's not something that personally impacts you, and they just do that, and this is quite controversial because, a lot of people are like, well, that really pisses me off. I don't like it because it's dirty or it looks messy or it's whatever. But that can be how it personally impacts you. So it could be when you leave your toothbrush in the sink, you also seem to leave your hairbrush on the side, and then you also leave your toothpaste with stuff coming out of it. And that really personally impacts me because I have to come and tidy up after you because, I hate dirty, messy sinks. So it does need to actually personally impact you, I believe, before you then decide to berate the person next to you. Because people have quirks, they have, personalities, they have different habits that are always going to be different to yours. And unless it's an agreed upon way of being, then it can be an exceptionally difficult thing to berate people on, because ultimately, why? It's actually none of your business. People are allowed to be who they are, and they don't need to be berated for personal habits, for whatever it might be. It might be singing in the shower. It might be tapping your foot. And unless it personally impacts you, leave them the frick alone, because they're just doing them. And that can be a really, really hard one, especially when you're a parent or in a couple, when there's habits that the other person really, really hates and detests. But typically that's when you need to work on your own triggers. Okay, I really hate it when my partner sings in the shower. Why? What are they doing? How are they hurting you? If it's waking the baby, sure, they probably need to do it super quietly or not at all. But if they're not hurting anybody, if they're not impacting anybody, if they're not personally pushing you for whatever reason, leave them alone. Just leave them alone. That's them. They're doing them. And this is where it can get really, really picky with couples because, especially when people are in a bad place, it becomes a, season of the pickiness. Oh, I hate it when you do this. Oh, can you stop doing that? Oh, can you please stop? Oh, blah, 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 blah. And then it becomes this like, you know, argumentative zone. And it's very tricky to get out of that zone because that's an ego place where someone's always trying to win. Oh, actually, can you please stop doing that? I really hate that. Oh, I really hate that too. Oh, can you please stop? And then the communication skills are lost, and then it can be really tricky. And I'm not saying don't put boundaries in. I think boundaries are exceptionally important, but be mindful whether they are personally impacting you or not. Be mindful whether it's something you can live with or not. If it's just annoying but you can live with it, then don't say anything. But if it's something that you know will make you explode, if it's something that's really personally impacting you and it's something that you can't stand, for whatever reason, you need to learn how to process your own emotions, right? And allow it to come through your body. And if it's still annoying you because it's personally impacting you in some way, then that is a conversation that absolutely has to happen. And goodness, you can even go further. You know, we've talked about other kind of communication skills in terms of, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it, you know, important? I think it was. Kind, necessary. Do you remember these ones? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it important? I think are the three rules. Do you guys remember what that one was?
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the third one either.
Is it true? Is it true? I just looked it up. Okay. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Okay. So that can also be really important. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? That's kind of part of that. The necessary is part of that personal impact. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? How can I say it kindly? And how can I speak the truth? Because this is actually really important. And if you've got two out of the three, then you need to say it. If you've only got one, you might not need to say it. So this is where discernment comes in. How do I discern when to speak up? Is this something that's impacting me? Is this something that I need to talk about? Is this something that I'm just triggered about and this is my shit and I need to process it on my own? Okay. And like I said, over communicating is very, very, very important, I believe, but that's when it impacts the other person. But when it doesn't, when it's just you being impacted, we need to kind of start to discern, okay, is this a conversation that needs to happen or am I just being triggered because of my stuff? And if we all took that time, I personally believe if we all took that time to discern between, is this my stuff or our stuff? Is this something that personally impacts me or not? Is it kind, necessary, and true? And how can I communicate this well? If we all took the time to ask ourselves those questions, I honestly believe 90% to 95% of arguments would cease to occur because we're actually coming at it from a conscious place. We're processing things as we go. We are not unnecessarily pulling people into our drama and hurts, but we're also making sure that when we communicate, we're doing it from a kind and necessary place so that the impact is actually going to be positive and not negative. But that's me. I want your feedback. How do you guys feel about all of that? Does any of this resonate with you guys in terms of how the communication is happening and what you think is important for, I guess, speaking your truth, because speaking your truth is very important. Is it true? If it's true, if it's your truth, and if it's necessary and if it's kind, then communicate away for sure. Any thoughts, any questions, any examples that you guys can think of off the top of your head?
What's interesting is that my 10-year-old has recently decided that he's in charge of the other two kids. And so it's, you know, kind of seeing him have these, you know, communication styles is just like, if I decide that you need to do something different, then you need to do something different. And as a parent, it's really frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
He cannot stop. Like we say, stop the conversation. Don't, you know, just like, let's just stop and walk away. And he like literally can't. He's always been like this. But what's really interesting, you know, when I'm not in the moment and really frustrated, I can see that he gets a lot of it from me, in how I communicate more kindly about things. But, I think this, is it necessary, is the biggest question. There are probably a lot of things that I say that aren't necessary, that aren't, specifically impacting me. And it's a little bit different as a parent of, kids trying to teach them, but still there are places to pull back.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. And it is, parenting is like a whole other ball game. And I think the over communication is always better than the under communication with parenting, always. And then I think that the most beautiful thing about being a parent is that our kids are here to teach us about us. So our kids are here to give us all of those lessons. And if that includes patience and communication skills, amazing. And one of the biggest things that I know for sure in all of my years of working, and you guys would probably have seen this too, is that we shift our kids by shifting ourselves. So if your 10-year-old is doing certain behavioral patterns that you don't like, that reflect you, you change your behavioral patterns. So easy. No worries. I know it's not that easy. But when you can consciously shift how you communicate and consciously shift how you approach things, it's monkey see, monkey do with kids. They will do it as well. And they will start to shift how they communicate, and they will start to behave differently. And, there are very occasional, exceptions to the rule. So kids are not always exactly replicas of their parents, but I'd have to say that is quite rare, that you would have someone that's not remotely like either parent and doesn't have behavioral and communication skills remotely not like either parent, because that's how they learn. And unless those parents have had nothing to do with them growing up, the chances are that there's going to be quite a lot of environmental impact from how you speak, how you communicate. And for 95% of the children that come to see me, I look at the parents and I see what's happening there. And that can usually fix a lot of the problems. So the way that we teach our kids then is through example and through changing our own way of communicating. And we don't even need to necessarily, especially at age 10, instruct them on how to communicate better. Even though that can be helpful, you can do that. But if you can get super, super conscious about how you communicate with them most of the time, then your 10-year-old will naturally start to move across to that. It's a tricky one, parenting. But then again, if they are then, impacting, hurting, or, otherwise menacing the other kids, then that is a personal impact, and we need to advocate for the child that's being impacted. And then that, as we advocate for those kids, we need to use our good communication skills to work on behalf of that child. Okay, so when you did that, this person felt blah, 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 or you can talk to the child and go, how did you feel, or how do you feel? You can give both the children a chance to kind of speak up on their side of the story. And then you can basically be the interpreter. Okay, so 10-year-old, when you did X, Y, Z to this person felt this, this, and this. And this is impacting them because, and next time, can you please blah? And then you can kind of come at it from that place if you're trying to mediate. It's a tricky one, but hopefully that's a little bit helpful. Anything else? Do you guys have any other questions, thoughts, examples that you want to share? So just to kind of recap, we've got the introvert, extrovert. So extroverts like to externally process. They like to speak a lot out loud about their thoughts, and introverts usually like to internally process. So often giving an introvert time and warning is really helpful. We've got the anxiously attached, avoidant, and secure. So if you're both secure, then your communication is more likely generally to be a little bit more balanced. If you're not, the anxiously attached person usually needs quite a lot of reassurance, and the avoidant needs space and time. Again, if you're an avoidant, you need to learn how to appeal to the anxiously attached so that they feel secure. And then for the anxiously attached, you need to learn how to give the avoidance space and self-soothe. Okay. Then we also have the kind, necessary. Oh my goodness, I keep forgetting it. Kind, necessary, true. Kind, necessary, true. So is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? And then that's when the communication can be really helpful. Now, all of these communication skills are typically when we're trying to approach conflict, or when we're trying to approach something that might be uncomfortable, or when we're trying to, even shift the behavior of somebody else or make someone aware of our own stuff. If we're just sitting there talking about the weather, who cares, right? But this is primarily in regards to relationship, whether it's parent-child, whether it's partners, whether it's, friends, whatever it might be. I think the most common reaction that people do, especially when they're not super close people, if they're just, random friends, most of the time we're going to avoid that conversation. Most people will avoid the conversation. Most people are non-confrontational. I would call that avoidant. And again, when we're dealing with spiritual bypassing, if we are impacted by something and we choose to avoid it, we are bypassing the situation. And so stepping into communication is probably one of the most uncomfortable things we'll ever do, especially if we don't see that person often enough to need to, or especially if we are scared about the outcome, and then we can avoid. So super important to make sure that we do actually kind of face and move through these situations, whether we actually speak to that person in person, or whether we just write them a letter and burn it, or whether we find a way to process it internally. We still need to find our way through sometimes. Or no, that's not true. We need to find our way through all the time. And sometimes that can mean a conversation with that person. It doesn't always have to, but if it is that person that's personally impacting you, if it's kind and if it's true and necessary to have that conversation, then that is a conversation that needs to happen, and we use those skills. When this happens, I feel, can you please? Always make it about you, and never make it about an accusatory poke at somebody else, because and we all have moments where this doesn't work. But these are the patterns. So I have no idea how we're going to do this meditation. No clue. But let's see what happens. So if you guys are cool, I'll make sure that you're already muted. We'll get started. Okay, get yourself totally comfortable. Either lying or sitting down. Just open your heart space into the moment, into this allowing of communication within yourself and with others. I'm going to get you to put your hands on your heart space and take a big 5-second breath in. And 5 seconds out. I'm going to get you to do that 2 more times, just to really ground yourself into the moment, into the space. And we're going to do that 1 more time. Okay, and just allow yourself to rest, calm and open. And we're going to step into the concept of opening, grounding, and having our hearts connected to somebody, even in conflict. And opening up to really being in your honest truth with kindness and speaking about necessary things. And I want you to picture yourself in a situation where things feel a little bit conflicted, whether it's in your daily life or an exceptional circumstance. And I want you to give yourself a moment to feel all of the emotions that are coming up for you in relation to that event. It might be a tiny bit of annoyance, or it might be huge amounts of very powerful emotion. Remembering that before we communicate, we must work through our triggers first so that we can be calm and clear when we connect. Allow these emotions to come through the top of your head, through your body, and out your feet. Every emotion that's coming up. If you need to pause this, you pause this while you do so. Just allow the tap of emotion to open up above your head and bring those emotions through every cell, tissue, and organ of your body, and then let them flow out your feet. Whatever is coming up for you in this situation. When you have processed all your emotion, you've allowed it to flow through you, I want you to just take a few big breaths and just breathe into your body. Allow yourself to feel grounded, bringing energy from your feet into the earth. You don't have to be stuck into the ground. You can be fluid with it, but just remember to stay in your body. And I just want you to imagine your heart chakra opening both front and back to create that sense of open, loving connection. Front and back is going to be a fairly large cone coming from the center of your chest out in front of you, and another similarly large cone from the middle of your chest out the back. These cones can spread out between 30 centimeters and a meter. It's up to you. But give yourself permission to open and keep it open. And with this openness, we want discernment about what and who we let in and what and who we filter out. And now we ask for the same to happen at our throat chakra. Through our throat, we have a cone from the middle of our throat section out to in front of us, and from our throat in the middle out the back, where the pointy ends of the cone are in the body, and the large circular parts of the cones are out of our bodies. Again, about 30 centimeters to 1 meter away. Open and give permission for open throat energy. We're also going to ask for discernment with communication, with our voice, with clarity, with awareness of both ourselves and the person we are communicating with. If anything feels a little bit stuck or hard to open with these chakras, just breathe, move your body if you need to, and keep allowing and giving permission for it to open and keep opening. But keep these open so that they can be strong and clear. And we can connect through our hearts and our voices to the other person without prejudice or harm. And we're just going to tune into ourselves, into our introversion or extroversion. We're going to connect deeply with our needs and requirements here. Do we need to speak our thoughts, or do we need to think our thoughts? When we're approaching the other person, do we feel anxious about this connection? Do we want to avoid the connection? Do we feel secure in the connection? And depending on how we feel, we can shift ourselves into a state of feeling grounded and secure through giving ourselves permission to feel safe, to feel open, and to feel clear. And as we go to speak our truth, we also need to connect with whether it's kind, necessary, or true. If our truth is impacting us and the conversation is necessary, we give ourselves permission to speak our truth from an I am place. I feel, I am impacted, I need. Remembering to bring in the concept of discernment. Is this something that you need to communicate, or just something you need to internally process? Is this communication going to enhance my relationship? Is it going to negatively impact it for no reason? If you have a reason, you must communicate it. If you are causing problems for no reason, apart from winning, ego, poking, battle, allow yourself to refrain for now and go back to processing your emotions with the emotions coming through your head, through your body, and out your feet. I want you to imagine this communication is coming from a place of love, from a place of clarity, and also, most importantly, a place of spiritual neutrality. You've already processed your emotions. You've already grounded yourself and opened your heart. So the energy from which you communicate is clear, loving, and open. And as you communicate this, I want you to imagine it being received in the very manner in which you intend. To communicate with love. To communicate your truth with clarity and openness. To enhance and enrich your relationships. When you allow that release of energy through communication, remember to take a really big breath in. Honor your progress. Allow yourself to feel the positive impact on the other person and also the relationship. Visualize the outcome of what you want to achieve with this communication. And allow that to become your reality. And as you take a deep breath, start to wiggle your fingers and toes. You may prepare for this conversation either on paper, in your mind, or with the person. Whenever you're ready, come back into the room and open your eyes. Okay. Take your time to come back. Take your time to come back whenever you're ready. And let me know how that was. Any thoughts, any blocks? Does that feel easier and more open? Does that feel just the same as it did before?
When I was imagining the conversation, I felt my throat chakra close, and then through the meditation, it opened back up again.
Awesome. Amazing. Very, very, very common. That's so cool that you observed that. Does it feel easier after it being open to have the conversation?
Yes, there's a lot of fear. Fear is like the name of my game right now. So yeah, there's a lot of like fear about speaking my truth, which now I feel is better.
Awesome. That's exciting. I think the more you open to that kind of open heart, open throat, oh my goodness, there's all of them here, the easier it gets. So yeah, it really is a case of, I guess, going through that process and giving yourself that time to open everywhere, allow and get neutral with it as well. So the more neutral you can get with it, and the fear will be one of those emotions that you can bring through your body, ideally to bring yourself into a greater state of neutrality for the conversation. And then hopefully, if you give yourself that time to process and move through the fear, then that conversation will become more easy, and you'll be able to kind of step into that without that charge, I suppose. Because every time we go into a conversation or a well, it could even be a potential conflict with charge. It can be, you can go into it with the charge, and then it's pretty much never going to land how you might like it to, because it's not neutral. Oui, dans 1 minute. Regarde les autres là. Olivia. Okay, dans 1 minute. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Olivia, Baba is watching you.
Yeah, I know. Oh my goodness. All right, I better jump off. Tandem feeding is probably not great for meditation class. So,
Mama la Baba.
Oui, Baba est là.
Baba, and she wants to talk to you. How is Olivia?
Say hi, Baba.
Hi. Oh God, she can't see me. Let's change that.
Eleven.
Yeah, exactly.
C'est Papa.
C'est Baba, oui. All right, so I will jump off. I'll let you guys go. There she is. Say hi, Baba.
Baba.
Baba, say hi. I'm not used to screen talking, huh? Say hi. Oh, I can't hear you now. I think you've muted yourself. Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. One thing gets going and the other one stops.
Papa.
Say Baba. Say hi, Baba. Oh, very cute.
C'est voiture.
Dans la voiture?
Yeah.
Non, elle est dans la maison. All right, I better get these 4 girls ready for school today. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. I hope that was helpful. So as always, if you've got any questions or feedback or whatever, please let me know and we can adjust as necessary. Hopefully that will be enough to kind of help with that opening into the conversation. Do you guys? Oui, it's on. If you guys have more that you want to talk about, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go on to the next thing next week. All right, I'm going to jump off.
Thank you.
Talk to you guys later. See you. Bye.